As the park ever grew more, so did the number of dinosaurs. Previously, the Cryolophosaurus had gotten their fitting names with Prince and Crystal, and next up were the 3 Triceratops that had been added to the park. Once again, thank you all for the wonderful names that you commented down below, and there were some really fitting ones for the trikes. We have 2 males and 1 female, and for the female trike, we decided upon the name of Trixie, as suggested by viewer Axie1YT. The name Trixie, of course, was from Toy Story and had a cute ring to it. For the males, we went with Tops, as suggested by the viewer Hydroraptor, and Spike, which was suggested by Jackson McGee. 2 short but stout names that fitted their fiery personalities, as they often would duel over the right to be with Trixie. The new Jurassic Park that was being built in Canada already had some very unique attractions, where there were some new sightings with the Cryolophosaurus or the Cridonsaurus, or the fact that this park had the world's first dinosaur hot springs. The animals seemed very happy and at ease in the park. The steam that emerged from the hot springs gave off some warmth to the other inhabitants and enclosures in the park, making it feel quite cozy despite the harsh weather conditions. Sightings of the dinosaurs enjoying the warm water when it actually snowed were very beloved. Nothing seemed better than to enjoy the dinosaurs getting warm and cozy while drinking a hot cup of chocolate with friends and family. But of course, the park needed to produce and continue putting out dinosaurs. Next up was another carnivore. This was nothing but logical, since the hot springs housed 5 different herbivores, and so it was time to introduce another meat eater. It was the turn for the Ceratosaurus to shine once again, and 3 were brought over to the park. Though the Ceratosaurus wasn't particularly big, it still made quite an impression with its unique looks. It had a beautiful bright color scheme with piercing yellow eyes, and had small spikes and a horn attached to its body and nose. In the very first zoo, only 1 Ceratosaurus was brought over, but due to their small size, it seemed that they felt very comfortable in a humble group. Unlike with something like raptors, they were not as organized and had a more relaxed approach of things when it came to hierarchy. The only time where they were all very fixated and precise was when they needed to hunt for a larger prey. They could not jump on another dinosaur and claw at it like raptors or Deinonychus did, and so they had to maneuver and orchestrate a precise attack pattern to where they could take down their prey with just bites. An easy task for something big like the Spinosaurus or T-Rex, but with the smaller jaws of a Ceratosaurus, multiple bites were necessary. Usually 1 Ceratosaurus would lead their prey on, while the other 1 or more would lay in wait and ambush the unlucky dinosaur as it was led their way. Of course, in this park they did not have to do that, and the goats were small enough to where they could hunt individually. That means the whole hierarchy bit wasn't really applicable here, but nevertheless the Ceratosaurus felt very comfortable and safe with some companions at their side. Now it was time for the next big project, and this was really one of the highlights of the park itself. Ever since the announcement of the creation of this new Jurassic Park, it had been at the horizon that a lagoon would be built for giant aquatic creatures. There were many to choose from, but the real king of the seas back in the day was the Mosasaurus. Though other marine animals would be added later, the park's higher-ups believed to start out with a bang and immediately would showcase the world to the magnificent splendor that was the Mosasaurus. But not only did they showcase one Mosasaurus, but to impress the world even more, they brought over a Mosasaurus couple. A male and a female Mosasaurus were released in the lagoon, and of course this loving couple needed a name for both of them, so viewers, help us out at the park once more. Come up with a good name for these two giant lovebirds and let me know in the comments down below. The Mosasaurs themselves were constantly on the move, and it was rare to see them together. Yet they never felt threatened by one another, which was good because Mosasaurs have also been known to eat other smaller Mosasaurus. Probably adding a third would escalate the matter, but for now, in the foreseeable future, these two seemed golden with one another. It was but a taste of what was yet to come when it concerned the aquatic creatures in the park. To ensure the Mosasaurus couple would get all the attention that they needed, the park had made viewing platforms everywhere, and had shows where they would be fed multiple times a day. Being as they were this big, the Mosasaurus required a lot of food. They were being fed with giant white sharks, a protected species, but ironically these white sharks were not bred naturally, but yet again cloned to make sure they had an ample supply to feed the Mosasaurus. Back in the day, a Mosasaurus would often swim close to the surface to hunt on other animals, including the ones on land, who would dare come too close to the shore for a drink or some cooling off. Now obviously, the Mosasaurus would spend most of its time submerged, and therefore the park made sure to build viewing areas that were underground to where the audience could see these magnificent creatures in all their glory as they swam by. The Mosasaurus was a giant hit, and would be for a long time to come, since it was the largest creature that would be housed in the park. It could easily eat a T-Rex just for breakfast if it wanted to, and the sheer size and menace of this animal made it to where it demanded respect from anyone who laid eyes upon it. And so the world's buzz surrounded the Mosasaurus for quite a while, and the park's higher-ups were already debating on what the next dinosaur would be that was going to be added to the park. There were of course some 5-star attractions that could be added, but the world was still enjoying that buzz of the Mosasaurus, and so many were of the opinion that the next animal should not take away from that. So a more humble dinosaur would be next, and it was decided that the new inhabitant would be the Pachycephalosaurus. Initially, these Pachy's were also considered to be added to the hot springs enclosure, but seeing as how frequently they would play and duel, it might stress out the other dinosaurs as their fights could become quite rowdy. 5 were flown over in total, and they would be guided to the enclosure next to the Ceratosaurus. They would be one of the first dinosaurs the audience would see when they arrived at the park, and that resulted in a good build-up with the guests being impressed despite their lack of impact compared to something like a T-Rex. The Pachy's were not as iconic as something like a Stegosaurus or Triceratops, but nevertheless were very unique looking, and there was always something going on in their enclosure. They were very feisty, maybe even a bit sassy, and would often bump heads just for a brief moment when passing one another. These could be seen as greetings or showcase of affection rather than a duel for dominance. But those duels to decide on the alpha did occur quite frequently, and more than any other dinosaur in the park did the hierarchy within this group change. It was common to have the crown be passed around 2 or 3 times a week. Luckily though, the duels never resulted in too much damage, since no spikes or teeth were involved. But every now and then they did have a Pachy with a sore neck that needed a small procedure. The irony in all of this was that the Pachy's were dinosaurs that could very easily live with other species, but it were the other species that often could not live with the Pachy's, since they were so rowdy all the time. But then it was finally time for another big attraction. The Mosasaurs still had all of the people's eyes on them, but another assured 5-star attraction would soon see the light of day. It was time to finally unleash the raptors once more.